Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. I have 3 new strange stories for you guys today, so I really think that you're going to enjoy it. If you're new here, my name is Brandy, and I bring strange, weird history stories, whether it has to do with witches or vampires or werewolves or whatever. If it's strange and it's odd and it's weird and it's witchy, I'm down for it. So, I also put makeup on my face at the same time. If you like what I use, I do list it below along with links to where you can get it. But anyway, yeah, today we have 3 crazy stories, 3 off-the-wall stories. These are actually a little bit more lighthearted than what we normally do, but they're still, it's still history, it's still fun, and I cannot wait to tell you guys these stories. So let me just go on ahead and get this party started for you. So our first story today is actually it's a little bit silly and it's a little bit weird, but it's actually kind of funny. I'm not gonna lie, because I did laugh, okay, but maybe that's just me. So, back in the 40s and the 1940s and things, there were no Walmarts, there were no, little side stores where you can go and get, a chicken. Most of the time people just went into their backyard, grabbed a chicken, and did what they needed to do with it. But on this certain day of September 10th in 1945, a farmer goes out to the chicken place, chicken shed, whatever, coop, and goes out there to gather a chicken because his mother-in-law is coming over for dinner and his wife needs the chicken so that she can make dinner. Sounds easy enough, right? It's an everyday chore for any person to go out and get a chicken. So, man does as he's asked. Lloyd goes out to the chicken coop, picks out a chicken, and proceeds to do what he does. And what he does is he would just chop their head off, and then that would be the end of the chicken. You would take it inside, and everything would be dandy. Well, he did that with this chicken. He cut its head off, and sometimes the body, it has the nerve endings and stuff, and it's still moving even when the head's not attached. But this chicken not only kept moving, he was actually walking, and he was actually trying to peck at the ground without a head. And so this chicken became famous because it actually lived through its beheading, okay? And they named him Mike. So I introduce you guys to Mike the Chicken, okay? This is a headless chicken that went around and did everything a chicken does, literally. So like I said, the chicken could still balance, it could still sit on a perch, all that fun stuff. And so the farmer kind of thought, hey, this must be some kind of miracle. So I'm going to keep this chicken and I'm going to name him Mike. So here we have Mike the Chicken, who could still balance on a perch. He was still trying to peck the ground. He was still doing everything that every other chicken does. He just didn't have a head anymore, okay? It sounds absolutely crazy. It would even try to crow. Yeah, imagine a chicken trying to crow that doesn't have like a mouth anymore, okay? So it would make these like weird gurgling sounds in its throat. It would be trying to do the cockle-doodle-doo, but it couldn't do it because it was just a throat. And you're probably wondering, Brandy, how is this even possible? You're probably thinking, maybe it lived for like 2 or 3 days. No, this joker became famous. He went on the road with like the sideshows they used to have for weird people, that people thought were weird. He was on the sideshow as Mike the Headless Chicken. So Lloyd cared for his chicken. He did. He gave it a mixture of milk and water, like in a little syringe, squirt syringe, and would feed it down its little windpipe that way, and would also sometimes give him, small worms and small pieces of food and things like that. And so Mike the Chicken still lived and kept on living for quite a while. So you're wondering, how did it happen? Okay, so what happened was, when this man swung down his axe, he did not sever the entire brain cord back there, those nerves that they have, because most of the nerves they have are at the base of their skull. And so the way he cut, he like missed an ear and missed the brainstem. And so that's why the chicken was still functional. Okay, and see, he still had one ear. He could still basically do motor skills, and he was basically a healthy chicken, like totally healthy, absolutely healthy chicken. And this is why I say, they started feeding him, and then so they started to charge money for people to come and see Mike the Headless Chicken. Oh yeah, people from everywhere would pay 25 cents to go and see this headless chicken. And like I say, it went on for a while. It did sideshows with like other abnormalities. He was photographed dozens and dozens of times with people. He was just, and when you look at the pictures, it's okay to laugh, because I laughed when I learned about this chicken, okay? Just because it's so bizarre. And I'm actually really super proud of this chicken, that it's still being able to live after going through all that. But the kicker is how the chicken dies, okay? So the chicken stays a chicken for like 18 months. They're on the road, they're on sideshows, they're doing all the things they need to be doing. But they leave their syringe and things like that one night when they're at this hotel. Lloyd leaves the syringe at the sideshow from the day before. Well, Mike the chicken starts getting mucus caught up in his throat. And so because they didn't have a syringe or a way to clear it out, that was how he died. He actually died choking. So this poor chicken in March dies in a hotel room in 1947 in Phoenix, Arizona, from choking because they didn't have their little devices to clear out his throat. It's kind of sad, but it's actually, he had a good life for his 18 months. Instead of becoming supper, he became a show for people to come and see. I know that sounds odd, but he did have a good life. His owner did love him, despite the fact the love wasn't there until after the head came off. But that's totally chill, I just thought that was just the silliest point of history that I've ever heard, and I had to share Mike the Headless Chicken with you guys because he overcame all kinds of obstacles. I mean, he got his head completely severed off, but because of the way he was severed, it clotted, and those nerves are still kicking and things back there, and and the way they fed him and stuff is kind of sweet. They took care of him for the rest of his life until he choked, which is kind of just off the wall bizarre. I'm sorry. Rest in peace. Rest in peace, old chicken. Yep, you will. He will be resting in peace. And I think that then our next story is hilarious because I feel like this was karma stepping in, which I'm totally fine with, obviously. We all know how I feel about Andrew Jackson, okay? He was not a good dude. I don't care. He's not a good dude. He was very racist. Not only against African Americans, but also against Native Americans. He was incredibly racist too. Everybody knows this. If you study him hard enough, you'll see that's all he did was a bunch of racist stuff. Anyway, getting off my high horse here for a second. So he bought a parrot for his wife, okay? And they called it Paul for Polly. And his wife, Andrew Jackson's wife, really, really loved this bird, like had it with her all the time. But it wasn't too long, before she passes away. And when Rachel Jackson passes away, of course, Andrew's like, well, I'm going to take care of this parrot or whatnot for her. And while he was away, there was another guy that would take care of the parrot. His name was William Donaldson. That was his nephew. And so whenever Andrew Jackson went away and had to go to a meeting or do war or whatever thing he was doing at the time, the bird would stay with his nephew. And he would write to his nephew. And he'd be like, hey, so how's Paul doing? Let me know how Paul is doing. Paul, Polly, the bird, whatnot. what's up with the, you know? And so he always wondered and kept in touch about it. Well, so in these letters, the bird is described as fat and saucy and predicted that she would live to be a really old bird, is what they say. And so eventually the bird lived with Thomas. Oh my God, see, there it goes again. I tried to say Thomas Jefferson. So like I say, eventually Andrew Jackson ends up having the bird with him like full time, you know. He's in the White House or wherever he's at. Maybe he's not in the White House at this point, though. And so, but he has his bird, and it's always in his office, and he's like best friends with this bird, okay? They're besties, him and this parrot. He's taken care of his wife's parrot for so long, and now they've become really, really close friends and things like that, you know. And he just loves this parrot so much, you know. And it's evident because he would show the bird to everybody that came by, and, you know, he kept it in his office. He took very good care of it. Well, you know, I would say it, unfortunately, but, you know, Andrew Jackson died in 1845. And the bird, of course, is still alive and still kicking. And they have this man's funeral, all right? So they're like, oh, he loved his bird so very much, you know. We should have his bird at his funeral, right? That's a great idea. Let's have his favorite thing, his favorite pet in the whole entire world at his funeral. That will just be so great, awesome, whatever. So the funeral is set up. You got old Andrew Jackson over there laid out. You got everybody in there crying and mourning, you know, his friends and his family and whatnot. And then they bring the parrot in. And what does the parrot do? The parrot starts to yell obscenities during this funeral. I'm talking about dropping every kind of terrible word you could possibly think of. He is not only saying it, he is screaming it at this funeral. It got so bad, this bird screaming these obscenities and this just saying these lewd, awful things. They finally removed the bird from the funeral and had to take it really far away from the house because this bird is still yelling obscenities even after it's being taken out of the church or wherever they're at. This bird, I don't know if it was like a karma thing or if maybe that's just an insight into how Andrew Jackson worked, because maybe that's all that came out of his mouth was terrible obscenities. I mean, the bird was with him like every single day until he died, and then it comes up and it's swearing at his own funeral. Like, it disturbed a lot of people there, and a lot of people thought this was fake. But there was an account there. There was a 15-year-old kid at the funeral, and he wrote about it later on in his life when he was like 80-something years old, about how this bird basically went off in this freaking funeral for Andrew Jackson. And it was his own bird that was yelling all these crazy, off-the-wall obscenities during his funeral. And it was disturbing people, so they had to take Paul out. Now, Paul had a good life after that. She stayed within the family, of course, and which is good, you know. Hopefully they broke her of her obscenities, but we never hear of her going off on anybody else ever again. That's for sure. I just thought that was absolutely insane that this freaking bird would do that. But hey, here we are, you know. Maybe the bird really didn't like Andrew Jackson. I don't know. Or maybe it was just doing what it was taught, which makes more sense to me because Andrew Jackson was such a racist. So, I'm just saying. Now, on to our next story, and y'all are gonna love this one. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. So I saved it for last. Have y'all ever heard of a horse named Lady Wonder? Well, she supposedly was a psychic. This horse, yes. Lady Wonder was a psychic horse, okay, back in 1924, and her story is actually pretty crazy. Yeah, I'm not going to say any more than that, then let's just go ahead and dive into it. So, Lady the horse was born on February 9th of 1924, and she was sold to her owner at the age of 3.5 weeks old. Okay, so you got to think that's really young. I mean, they're still, drinking milk from their mother and things like that at that age. And so to buy her so young, the owner had to bottle feed Lady. And so that, of course, kind of drew them together. She was always with this horse, wanted to make sure this horse was going to survive. She really loved Lady, because she was bottle fed, and then she started to train the horse on how to spell with wooden blocks. She started to teach it how to do math. She started to teach it how to spell and all this other stuff with these wooden blocks. Of course, that's when it's little. As it gets older, she devises this typewriter thing, so that each button that it pushes, a letter will flop up. And so you could ask the horse questions and the horse would answer you. So her owner, Claudia, is teaching her how to read and supposedly teaching her how to read and teaching her how to spell and how to do math and all those other kinds of stuff. Well, she actually starts making predictions. Okay. The lady made all kinds of predictions with her little typewriter or whatnot, even though over 150,000 people had come see this horse. She was still coming up with ways for people and reasons for people to come and see the horse, And so now the horse was a medium, and it was going to help in finding some kids. Yeah, it actually helped the police. She predicted the outcome of a boxing match between Tooney and Dempsey in 1927. She predicted every single presidential election during that time, except for the Truman over Dewey in 1948. So she did have some predictions that weren't true, but that's okay. Not every medium is perfect. But people still went and asked her questions. So did the police. They were like, hey, we need help in finding this kid. This kid named Danny went missing in Quincy, Massachusetts. He was 4 years old. And Lady spells out Pittsfield water wheel. Well, the cops are like, well, there's not really a water wheel in this area, so we're not really quite sure what the horse is talking about. So then the police kind of looked at it a little bit further, and they said, okay, maybe the horse meant field and wild water pit, which was already a place that they had searched, but they went and researched it again, and they found the 4-year-old's body. And so the horse was attributed to them going back and re-looking in that spot and then finding the boy. So a lot of people, because of this, took what the horse said, because this was verification. This was, hey, they actually found the boy exactly where they said they would find him. And, so maybe next time the horse can help again. And it does. In 1952, 2 children went missing in Naperville, Illinois. The boy's mother reached out to Lady for help. She was like, hey, I need some help. I can't find my boys. Can you help? So this lady goes to Lady for answers about where these 2 boys could be. And so what does Lady spell out? She spells out DuPage River, which was a river that wasn't far from the kids' home. Okay. But it was also a place that they had already searched. But Lady, the horse, is like, okay, y'all need to search it again. So they research this quarry. It's basically a quarry. And they find the kids' bodies there, the 2 kids' bodies. And so she's been attributed to knowing a lot of different things. So this, of course, attracted a lot of people that wanted to test the gangster of the horse. They wanted to test, hey, we want to see if this horse is actually psychic, or maybe her owner is giving her cues. So we had a lot of skeptics, like I say, come around, and they were all wanting to test old Lady and see if what she was saying was actually true. And so we had one guy come in and basically said that he was going to write a number on a piece of paper, but what they do is they write a completely different number on a piece of paper, And so he tells the owner, I'm going to write the number 9, and we'll see if she can pick up, see if she can read. She wouldn't show, and then he would just write one line for 1, and then the horse picked 9. Well, comes to find out that Claudia had been cueing the horse on what letters to hit the entire time. So that's why when there were some things the horse got wrong, it's because the owner didn't know the answer. So she would just cue the horse to hit the letters and all this. So it's basically debunked that no, she was not a horse that was a medium, unfortunately, which would have been cool. But if you think about it, what this woman Claudia did, I mean, she taught this horse how to do these things. That in itself is absolutely amazing. That should have been amazing in itself. But to kind of take it to the notch of, okay, I'm going to use it to help people, solve their problems, but yet you're cueing the horse on what to say. That's wrong in my opinion. Unfortunately, the horse shouldn't, the horse was taught a certain trick, and the horse would do it only by the guide of her owner, of course, Claudia. Basically, the horse would only say what her owner cued her to say. Okay, and so we don't know if she knew about these kids' bodies or whatnot, or maybe she was just taking a wild guess. But I have a feeling she was probably just taking a wild guess since she probably read in the paper where they searched, and then she was like, maybe they didn't search it good enough, so I'm going to send them back there. Who knows? But I thought that was it's pretty amazing talent to teach a horse how to spell and do arithmetic just by you doing certain gestures. That's absolutely amazing in itself. They really shouldn't have exploited her talent, because this horse did have a talent. And obviously the owner loved this horse so much, stayed with this horse all the time, because you get a horse at 3 weeks, that's young, That's a young horse, very, very young. And horses are so intuitive, and they are so smart. And it's so amazing that Miss Claudia was able to teach the horse, but she must have dedicated so much time and care into this horse. And it was her best friend, I just don't know why she had to take it to the next step of being a medium, when in itself the horse being able to do these things under cue is absolutely amazing. And the lady taught the horse how to do it herself. And so it was an absolutely amazing story. I wish the horse was a medium, but it was not, unfortunately. I hope that you guys enjoyed these stories today. Mike the Chicken was a surprise to me, and I absolutely love Mike the Chicken. That is just absolutely amazing, that story. To me it is, anyway. And I'm not going to say I have a little bit of satisfaction on the fact of Paul the Bird going off on Andrew Jackson in his funeral. It kind of shows what kind of person that he was, and all that fun stuff. And this beautiful horse lady, horses are very intuitive. I wouldn't go so far as to say medium, but they are very intuitive, and I can see how teaching this horse is absolutely amazing thing. But to kind of go off the rails and say that it was a medium and that all these people would come, she was making so much money off the horse just by people coming by. 150,000 people went and visited this horse, and so she made money off them visiting the horse and answering their questions. I'm just not sure why she had to take it so far as the horse was a psychic type deal. So, but anyways, that is our stories for today again, and I hope that you guys like it. I really enjoyed researching these stories. They were really, really good. Anyways, if nobody's told you today, I love you, and I hope that you guys have a wonderful weekend and have fun. All right, and I'll see you guys soon. Much love.